NBA, or an MRI confirmed Klay Thompson tore his right Achilles and will miss a second straight season. His agent telling Woj that Klay is expected to make a full recovery in time for the start of the following year. Here's the Warriors GM Bob Myers addressing the franchise.
I can't sit here and say I feel good. I have confidence in our players. I have confidence in our coaches. I have confidence in our ownership. And we're going to keep moving. We're never going to stop. But to be truthful, this hurts. It hurts me, and I know it hurts our organization.
Here's how Vegas sees it. You look at this from Caesars Sportsbook by William Hill. The Warriors' odds to win it all dropped from 8-1 to 20-1, and their odds to come out of the West double as well. So let's talk about this here a little bit as we have Woj back with us. And Jalen Rose is getting up early with us this morning as well. Woj, for those who haven't heard, the Warriors are making some moves, right? They get some flexibility based on this injury, and they're not just choosing to sit out this season.
That's right, Greeny. They're finalizing a trade with Oklahoma City. They're going to bring in Kelly Oubre and his $14.4 million into a trade exception that they had. He'll cost the Warriors in salary and luxury tax $80 million next season. But certainly, maybe one of the best available wings. He came over to Oklahoma City from to the Warriors. They're going to send a 2021 first-round pick to Oklahoma City. And so that gives them certainly a player who they could plug into the starting lineup, who can come off the bench, who can score the ball. But obviously you're not replacing Klay Thompson. He's a Hall of Fame player and part of, with Steph Curry, the best backcourt in the NBA when they're healthy.
For sure. So, Jalen, we look at the Warriors. It's Steph, it's Draymond, it's Wiggins, it's Wiseman, who they drafted, and now Kelly Oubre. What are they in the Western Conference?
The Warriors are a team that's going to be scratching and clawing, Greeny, to try and make the playoffs. If you think about the trek of their greatness of making 5 straight NBA Finals, winning 3 championships, the latter 2 came when they added Kevin Durant. And that's because the Western Conference started to catch up. And when we start talking about the top players in the league, I think people should now put some respect on Klay Thompson's name, because I've always described him as one of the top 12 or 15 players in the league. Just think about this. He's a 5-time All-Star. He's an all-defensive player. He has the NBA record for most threes in a quarter, most points in a quarter, Greeny. Like, this guy is so effective, so efficient, and so low maintenance. He scored 60 points in a basketball game and only dribbled 19 times. And why does that matter? That means other people around him are able to facilitate. Draymond Green is still able to get off. Steph is able to do his catch and shoot. You want to add KD? Fine. He'll still find a way to blend in. And then sometimes when it mattered the most for the Warriors, Game 6 Klay, that's a real thing. That's a real thing. If it wasn't for Game 6 Klay, KD probably never even joins the Warriors. I love Kelly Oubre. He's one of those guys that always look deeper into the box score. And I was scratching my head that the Wizards let him go. He was a 19-point scorer last year. He's going to give him competitiveness. He's going to give him toughness. But when you look at the landscape of the Western Conference, there's so many elite players. There's so many franchise caliber guys that I just believe if the Golden State Warriors make the playoffs, it will be a first-round exit once they got in.
So, yeah, I'm with you on all of that. And Thompson is so clutch. All right, it's a terrible loss. It's a terrible story. Meanwhile, Woj, the Gordon Hayward thing is fascinating. What happened yesterday with Boston, and what does his future look like?
Well, his agent, Mark Bartelstein, told me that he's opted out of the $34 million in his contract this season. So he's got a few options here. He and Mark Bartelstein have been working through with the Celtics, sign and trade scenarios. He can obviously sign as a free agent with a team that has salary cap space. There are a lot fewer of those, and they're not all maybe teams that kind of fit where Gordon Hayward is in his career. But, the sign and trade route where he can get an extension, Boston can get some players back that match up to his money, that's going to be continued to be discussed today. Indiana's a team that has had interest. We know Gordon Hayward's from Indianapolis. I know that scenario is one that appeals to him, but I think for Hayward, he's going to try to find a place where he can get a long-term deal. He was headed into the 4th year of that big free agent deal he had signed with the Celtics coming from Utah.
What do you think, Jalen? Where should Gordon Hayward, where would he look best to you?
Indiana. I played there almost 6 years, Greeny. That's where he grew up. I followed him when he played at Butler. And I think he'd be a great fit for the Pacers. You pair him with Victor Oladipo and Malcolm Brogdon. The Pacers have always been one of those teams in the East, just like the Portland Trail Blazers in the West. And this is why I was disappointed they fired Nate McMillan. That when you look down at the standings, you're like, wait a minute, the Pacers are in fourth? They always seem to outplay expectations. And so Gordon Hayward coming off an injury, returning to the Celtics, he was actually effective. But when you have Jaylen Brown and you have Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart and so many, and Kemba Walker, it's just not enough basketballs for Gordon Hayward, a guy that can create off the dribble, playing pick and roll, and has been an all-star in this league and a 20-point scorer.
Jalen Rose again, Jalen and Jacoby this afternoon, and then Adrian Wojnarowski tonight. You see it on your screen, a little over 8 hours away from free agency getting underway in the NBA. Woj will have all the stories as always as we go. But to the big story yesterday from the NBA, and of course it's awful, an MRI confirming that Klay Thompson tore his right Achilles. He'll miss a second straight season. Woj reporting that Klay is expected to make a full recovery for next year. Here's the Warriors.
I can't sit here and say I feel good. I have confidence in our players. I have confidence in our coaches. I have confidence in our ownership. And we're going to keep moving. We're never going to stop. But to be truthful, this hurts. It hurts me, and I know it hurts our organization.
Well, look, and Vegas is acknowledging the obvious, just not as much of a championship threat. According to Caesars Sportsbook by William Hill, the Warriors' chances of winning the title go from 8-1 to 20-1, and the odds to make it out of the West have doubled as well. And so we bring in Woj and Tim Legler here for some reaction to this. And Woj, we start with you. What more are you hearing from the Warriors about Klay's injury and their expectations for their season?
Well, as Bob Myers said, there's great disappointment. He went through, a really rigorous rehab to come back. He was just playing pickup in Southern California like guys do, getting ready for training camp, and the injury hits him. So the Warriors have gone out. They're finalizing a trade for Kelly Oubre with Oklahoma City. They have a trade exception from the Andre Iguodala trade that expires on Monday. They'll absorb $14.4 million of Oubre's deal. They're going to send a 2021 protected first-round pick to OKC. Now, you talk about commitment, with an organization to try to keep going. Think about this. Oubre's contract at $14.4 million with luxury tax, he's going to cost them $80 million this season. He's a fine player, and he's certainly as good as they could find in the marketplace. But instead of kind of mailing this year in terms of what they could do with the roster, $80 million commitment to bring in Oubre, and that deal will be finalized here in the next 24 hours.
That's fascinating math when a $14 million deal costs you $80 million. But let's pick up that thought, Tim. So you add Oubre and you add Wiseman, who they drafted. And remember, they have Wiggins now. What is this team this year without Klay?
Well, I still believe they can be a playoff team, and mostly that's based on the greatness of Steph Curry. I just believe in his impact on the game, not only what he does in terms of creating offense, but the opportunities that are there for other people because of his presence on the floor. He's going to make Andrew Wiggins a much better player. Their system will make him a much better player. Kelly Oubre is a guy that's going to give them now some additional punch. You still do have Draymond Green, and I think James Wiseman could be an impact player from day one. So I really like their starting five's potential, and the greatness of Steph Curry, to me, keeps them in the playoff hunt. I just don't like their bench very much at all, Greeny. Let's see if they're going to make some additions there that can really make most people buy in, not just myself, because right now I think I'd probably be on a short list of people that think that they could be a 4 or a 5 seed in the West.
And Woj, quickly, one other big story yesterday, Gordon Hayward opting out and becoming a free agent. What is his current market, and what was the reasoning behind that?
Greeny, there's a couple things he can do now. He can sign, obviously, as a free agent with teams who have salary cap space. There's not many of them. More likely is he'll continue to work. He and his agent, Mark Bartelstein, will continue to work with the Celtics and trying to find a sign-and-trade deal to a team that doesn't have cap space, but he can do an extension through that sign-and-trade even though he's opted out. Indiana's a team who's had interest with him. He's obviously from Indianapolis. They weren't able to get there yet on a sign and trade with Boston, but there's still some teams out there. New York would love to bring him in on maybe a big money, shorter deal, but I think Gordon Hayward's looking to get a longer-term security in the marketplace.
Legs, quickly, give me one team you think should be right now going crazy trying to get Gordon Hayward.
I look at the Western Conference. I think there are 3 teams. Utah, Denver, and Phoenix, for me, would be 3 teams that would be very interesting for Gordon Hayward. They need help at that position. He still wants to be a starter. And all of those teams are different levels of interest depending on how you look at them as playoff teams. Phoenix obviously on the rise now with Chris Paul. Denver and Utah need more scoring punch to try to match up with the Lakers and Clippers.
And Utah, of course, where he began his career and had so many really good seasons. And you see the countdown on your clock. NBA free agency begins in less than 10 hours. That means that Woj will be the busiest man in the United States. Thank you, guys. We'll check in a little later as we continue.